before we move to questions from senators. So we'll start with Ms. MacNeil, followed by Ms. MacDonald, and then ending with Ms. Crawford. So the floor is yours for 5 minutes when you're ready. So we'll first of all hear from the Victim Services of Durham Region, Ms. MacNeil.
Kwewaliiksipug, Wadabekasi Nujiyohano Kuktahunguk, Unamagi, Mi'kma'ki Territory. Bill Krista MacNeil, and I'm the Executive Director of Victim Services of Durham Region. I've been a registered social worker working with survivors of crime and trauma for the past 22 years. As a First Nations woman and service provider, I've witnessed the re-traumatization that happens for victims and their families as they attempt to navigate the criminal justice system. It's understandable that many survivors choose not to receive information about these processes, often with the hope of reducing exposure to situations that may re-traumatize them. This is and should always remain their choice, which I believe Bill C320 supports. It's been my experience that many victims are not consistently advised of their right to information and are even less frequently advised of the implications of exercising or choosing not to exercise that right. The Act and Victims' Bill of Rights places the onus on victims to have knowledge of a system that they are unfamiliar with in order to make important decisions that could impact their lives, their healing, and their sense of safety. That accountability should lay with the system. Victims have enough to contend with. Decisions that impact offenders also impact their victims. Despite the sentence handed down to an offender, victims of trauma are often handed a life sentence. Yet they receive no pardon after their years of suffering. In fact, they face extensive waitlists for support when re-traumatized by the sudden removal of accountability as they once understood it, which is often something they're very unprepared for. Their victimization is no less life-altering because an offender demonstrated good behavior or showed promise on an assessment of criminogenic risk factors. At the very least, victims deserve to be well informed about possibilities, as well as advised and prepared in advance for decisions that may have a drastic impact on their lives, so that they may attempt to proactively safety plan and navigate wait lists for the support they may require. A system that defaults to removal of this right because the same system fails to ensure adequate education for survivors is a system that needs to change. While triggers may still exist outside the system, all efforts to mitigate that risk within the system must be taken if we are truly committed to ensuring the rights and protection of victims. And yet, we continue to have a Bill of Rights that concludes with a statement that victims have, and I quote, "no cause of action from an infringement or denial of a right under this Act." Bill C320 will not fix the system, but it will bring us one small step closer to ensuring victims are empowered to make informed decisions. I believe that if victims knew the real implications of their choices, we would have a system that hears more of those voices. I believe hearing those voices would enhance the system's ability to view these processes in a more holistic way that upholds the rights of both victims and offenders. We know the majority of victims are women and girls, and those who are marginalized are disproportionately impacted not just by victimization, but also criminalization. Inequity is at the root of what we are talking about today, and that is why this Act needs to change. I implore this government to consider the implications for a victim from a small urban community to which the offender also belongs. Without resources to support the victim and rehabilitation for the offender, decisions made by the system can have devastating impacts to entire communities. Lack of supports both inside and outside the system create the perfect storm for re-victimization and criminalization, fueled by inequity. Proactive resources would address both. 80% of the victims we support at our agency are women and girls. They are victims of gender-based violence. I know that violence against women is an epidemic in this country. When an offender is released without notification to the victim, the actual and sense of safety of that victim may be threatened. We've all seen the news. Men do not refrain from killing women simply because we told them not to. And for this reason alone, we must do better. I want to extend my deepest appreciation to my friend Lisa Freeman and MP Colin Carey for your unwavering activism and devotion to enhancing survivor rights. And I would like to thank our elected officials and members of the Senate for your collective recognition of victims' rights as a nonpartisan issue deserving of unanimous support for Bill C320. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you.